Welcome to Inspire Campfire, a podcast where ordinary people tell their stories of extraordinary adventure. These are campfire stories meant to inspire the rest of us to light the fire within, get outside, follow our dreams, and return to tell our own stories. Ready? Let's strike the match.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Scott Wurzbacher. And today, we're going to find out what happens when adversity in life challenges us to reach for something bigger than ourselves. Our guest is Les Mason, a firefighter from Edinburgh, Scotland. Over the past few years, Les and his wife, Alana, have experienced a personal challenge that's left them feeling a sort of disharmony with Mother Nature. In an effort to take back control, Les decided to take on a whole different challenge, to create some space from the one he was in, and to be able to find a way to bring the two together in a very positive way. This is an incredible story of perseverance, and I can't wait to share it with you all. Les, welcome to the campfire.
Hi, Scott. Thanks for being on. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I've just been looking at some pictures and checking out this journey that you took, and I can't wait to share it with our listeners. Let's start with Les Mason's day-to-day life in Scotland. Tell us a little bit about you and what life looks like for you.
Yeah, perfect. So my wife and I stay approximately 8 miles south of Scotland's capital city, Edinburgh, and we have our energetic 2-year-old dog who lives with us as well, and he takes up most of our time. It can be quite destructive at points, so he takes a lot of work. My wife works in real estate, as we call it in the US, so she buys and sells property, values property, etc. And I'm a firefighter, so I've joined the fire service 2002, so coming up for 20 years now of being in the fire service.
Yeah, it's amazing. So you're a day-to-day hero. You're a first responder in Scotland and taking care of issues on a day-to-day basis. And you know what that's like.
Yes, thankfully, day-to-day is a lot more routine than it is life-saving, which for someone in the fire service is good because we like people to be safe and for people to be going about their lives. But yeah, it's certainly been a very exciting 20-year career at points. There's been a lot of things that I've been involved in which have been challenging. Yeah.
So we're here today to talk about an adventure that you took, an incredible adventure where you crossed the country of Scotland from coast to coast in an incredible way. And I'm going to let you tell that story, but there was a series of events that sort of led you to that point. So do you mind sharing the story with us and telling us kind of what led you to this adventure that we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, of course. It's probably a good way to actually set the scene too, Scott. So my wife and I have been married for 8 years now, and over the course of our marriage, we've had 4 miscarriages. Each and every one has obviously been very, very tragic, and it affected us both in terms of our mental health, but also our kind of outlook on life. That we found that the subject of miscarriage and baby loss and stillbirth, it's still very taboo. So if you were to break your leg, for example, people would offer you sympathy. You would know how to be with someone who has a broken leg because they can see what's happened. They can help you walk about. They can do lots of things for you. But with miscarriage and with infant baby loss, etc., people just don't know how to be around that because it's not something that's really spoken about. And it should be, because 1 in 4 pregnancies end in a miscarriage. So there's probably odds-on chance that a lot of females will experience a miscarriage in their life, but we just don't talk about it. And after the kind of first miscarriage, we're getting comments like, "Well, just try again, just go again." But if someone had broken the leg, you wouldn't say to that person, "Well, just don't break your leg again." You wouldn't do that. So I say that to a mother who's just lost a child. So I think we wanted to encourage that conversation and to be very open about, look, this is what's happened. This is what we feel. This is how we should be having this conversation around miscarriage, not treating it as this kind of taboo subject that isn't really spoken about, but we all know what happens. So my wife and I sought to undertake a very inspiring headline grabbing event where I would look to go up against Mother Nature and the challenges that she would throw, and hopefully get through the other side to show that although things such as miscarriage, as tragic as they are, there is the potential to go up against Mother Nature and actually have benefits off the back end of that. So in true Forrest Gump style, I chose to start on the east coast of Scotland and just cut a straight line right across the country and not stop until I got to the Atlantic coast on the west side of the country.
Yeah, it's amazing. So you set across on this journey to go coast to coast, but it wasn't just, you made it a little bit more challenging because you put a timeline on it. Let's talk about that.
So we set a very ambitious time of doing it in less than 24 hours. So it was 200 kilometres in length, and they would only use human power alone. So there'd be no motorised transport at all, other than for the people who were supporting me. So I'd be cycling, swimming, rowing, running, and climbing across the Highlands of Scotland in this straight line corridor until we completed the event, and they would do it in less than 24 hours.
Yeah, I mean, this is mind blowing to me. I think so. First of all, 200 kilometers, I believe, is like 125 miles ish.
Yeah, sorry, yes, it is.
Yeah. So for those of us here in the US, 125 miles, but this isn't just flat terrain either. Can you talk to us about like what is the terrain like from one coast to the other?
The whole country of Scotland varies. So if you're kind of in the southern part of the country, it's very like rolling hills, etc. But the further north you go, the more mountainous it becomes. So where we were in Scotland, we started in the kind of southern Highlands, so we were just at the kind of southern edge of the mountainous areas, and pretty much the only flat section of the event was the row and the swim, because they were on water. Everything else that was across land was up and down hills. I think in total the total climb was 7,200 metres, which is half the height of Mount Everest roughly. So over the course of the event, we did half the height of Mount Everest all in.
Yeah, that's amazing. So can you break it down, like rowing, swimming, cycling, running across 125 miles in less than in 24 hours? Can you break down each one of into the events and kind of give us a breakdown of what each one of those looked like?
Yeah, of course. So the event started as a small fishing town called Montrose on the east coast of Scotland. So it's got a coastline with the North Sea, and if you kept on going east, you eventually hit Denmark, mainland Europe, etc. So it sits pretty high up on the latitude, and we left Montrose by bicycle, and we cycled for 80 miles. So the event started at 7 p.m. at night. So we'd done a lot of planning, and we wanted to do most of the cycling at night when it was dark, because it would mean that the roads were a lot quieter.
Sure.
There'd be traffic and stuff as well, so it'd be a lot safer. But also meant that the events which followed after that would then be in daylight as well. So it'd be a lot safer for the events which followed. So we cycled for roughly 80 miles through the night. The weather was not kind. It was really, really high winds, driving rain. Had to change my clothing 3 times because we just saturated through. And we had 3 checkpoints along the way. So I would cycle into a Peering's Point. There'll be a team waiting for me with change of clothes, food, drink, any bicycle servicing that had to get done, almost like a pit stop kind of idea. I would stop for less than 5 minutes and then I'd be back out on the road again and cycle through the night till about roughly 1 a.m. in the morning. So we're cycling from 7 a.m. until 1 a.m. more or less non-stop. Wow, and really undulating terrain is probably the best word of it. It was very, very hilly.
Yeah, okay.
Up and down. And at 1 a.m. I ditched the bike and I entered into a loch, as we call it in Scotland. It's probably a lake in the US. So we had a kilometre swim, and on the other side of the bank from this lake, we set up a very, very bright searchlight. So when we're in the water, we knew where to aim for because it was just pitch black. There was nothing. This is you and this big lake. So we swam, myself, Gary, and Jill, who were my teammates for the swim section. We swam across the lake at night, exited the water about 1:20 roughly. Then I went back on the bike for a further 5 miles to the start of where the row would take place.
Yeah, so I want to go back. I'm trying to envision this in my head. So you're in the dark swimming, and you're basically just swimming towards the light, essentially.
Yes, because of where it was in the Highlands, there's no street lights, there's no towns, there's no houses, so there's no real points of reference at all. It's just a black.
Yeah, and it's pitch dark. Swim to the light. That's
Yeah.
incredible. All right, so then you jump out of the water, back on the bike, 5 kilometers on the bike.
Yep. So roughly 3 miles to the first kind of small village.
Okay.
That I stopped in the firehouse of that village for probably a good hot food, hot drinks.
Nice.
Then we got our kayaks from the support trailer and we entered a huge lake, which is called Loch Rannoch. And that was a 10-mile row along the lake. We set off just as the sun was rising because, again, there's no points of reference at all. So we didn't want to be rowing in the dark because we could just be going around in circles for all we know because there was no bearings at all. So we rowed for 10 miles and the weather had changed markedly at that point. So it was a beautiful morning. The water was calm, it was flat. And it was good to finally rest my legs and just row and just paddle along for a few hours. It was beautiful. It was such a beautiful morning with the sun rising, mountains, all the birds tweeting and stuff. It was phenomenal.
Yeah. So you actually shared some photos with me, and I'll make sure that those are in the show notes. But some of my favorite pictures were just the kayak in the very calm water. And that you're painting the picture here for the listeners of the beautiful morning, but the pictures, if you want to jump over to the show notes, there's some great photos there.
I think what was good about the row was that it was a real contrast to the cycle. So that the cycle was pretty severe weather, severe winds, severe rain, severe hills. It was just movement. It was just sweat and stress trying to get through it. Then you're slowly paddling in the lake swimming, so it's getting more and more tranquil. And by the time you come into the kayak, this weather window's basically blown over, and it's now just a beautiful, beautiful morning. And it's so quiet and it's so tranquil. It was a good rest. I think had we had to row in that wind as well, that'd be almost on the point of not being achievable because it was a really
gifted some grace there for a beautiful morning on the water. That's awesome. So 10 miles or so on the kayak.
Yep. And then the biggest challenge of all, so exited the kayak and basically went on foot for the remaining 30 miles of the course. So we've done roughly about 100 miles at this point, all in. And the remaining 30 miles were across an area called Rannoch Moor. It's like this big wide open plain almost.
Okay.
And that was about midday. And that's probably been, I would say, that was the lowest point of the event because at this point I'm very fatigued. What I hadn't factored in was although our event started at 7 p.m, I'd actually been awake since 7 a.m. that morning getting trucks and bicycles and the boats and things and all the food together. So I'd actually already been on the go for more than 24 hours.
Right.
So at that point, that was probably the lowest point. I was getting really hot as well. So it's this really wide open plain. I'm probably a bit dehydrated, a bit underfed, tired. Right. The sun's coming down and there's mountains in the distance of this plain, but no matter how much you run, they never move. So it's like they're never getting any closer. And that was probably the kind of toughest mental battle for me was getting across that plain because it was just a slog. You seem to be making absolutely no progress at all.
Yeah, and you're tired and you're seeing those mountains and you still have to go over those mountains.
Yes, yeah.
So what time is it when you start that last 30 miles on foot? How much time do you have left to the 24-hour mark?
Probably got about 8 hours at that point, I would say.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so I'm basically hitting the run just before midday. So it's probably about 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning, we were starting the run.
Okay. All right. So we're slogging through the plain, and then we've got a mountain to climb.
Several mountains, yeah. So the final part, and the reason I'd like to do this section in daylight, there's a mountain ridge in Scotland called the Annahegic Ridge, and it's deemed to be the most difficult horizontal scramble in the country. So it sits 950 meters above sea level, so you're pretty high up.
Yeah.
And it's not a vertical drop, but there is a kind of sheer drop off of both sides, and it's extremely narrow in places. So on certain points, you're on your hands and knees, kind of picking your way over this thing, and doing that with very tired legs, very tired eyes and head and arms and things like that is really, really challenging, because you had to gain the height. So from sea level, so you're coming across the plain, you then basically start from 0 feet at sea level, then gain that 950 meters up to start the ridge. And as I say, that's where the fatigue really began to hit, because you're thinking about everything you've done to this point, but you're looking up at this big sheer hill we have to get up, and you're just thinking, have my legs got anything left at all?
You definitely saved the best for last. Going up over this thing. And again, I want to refer back to the photos that you sent me, and please, listeners, I'd love for you to jump over to the show notes, because first of all, I mean, they're majestic mountains. It's absolutely beautiful, but also just to think that, these are mountains that you're going to climb up and over in this 24-hour period. And at this point, you've only got 8 hours left, maybe even less than that, because you've run the plains at this point. So, I mean, I want to hear about the ridge and this up and over, because from these pictures, you're on your knees, you're using your hands. This was not just hiking, this wasn't just a walk.
Yes. Yeah. So as part of the planning for the event, we'd gone up the month before, and basically we'd done a recce, or a reconnaissance of all the routes. So we'd driven and walked elements of the cycle section, we'd assessed the banks of the lake for the kayaks, etc. And we'd also done the Annahegic Ridge the month before, so we could identify areas of concern. And when we did the recce, it was a beautiful day. It was sunny, it was dry, it was great. We flew along it. It was no problem at all. On the day of the event, it was raining, so all the rocks were very, very slippery.
Right.
So you would put your foot on a small ledge to do a climb, and it would just slip off. So we had my friend Stephen was with us, and Stephen's a very accomplished mountaineer. So he brought like ropes and harnesses and grabs and things. So we knew that if it got to the point where it was so dangerous, we would use ropes, and we would basically climb the thing. But the time that it would take to set all that up would put us beyond the 24-hour target, because that would slow us right down. So prior to the event, we made a big, it was myself and 12 support staff, we made the agreement that we would never compromise safety to get it. We would always aim to finish it safely rather than aim to finish it in 24 hours. But being so close to the end, I got probably what's termed as summit fever, where I wanted to finish in that time, because I knew that I could do it. And I knew that if I'd done it, I would be the first person to ever do it. So we're kind of huddled together on this cliff top, saying, are we going to use the ropes? And we kind of agreed that we know the route over this ridge because we've done it before, so we know where the handholds are and what route to take. As long as we take our time and we be cautious and we check every single handhold, then we'll just basically free climb it because it's quicker. Right. And we're happy that we can still do it safely. It's never compromised anyone's safety to get this challenge done. And that was probably the biggest key moment of the event, was looking at the risks that we had and making that judgment of saying, is it worthwhile carrying on the way that we are to achieve this objective? And in the end, we said yes. But the whole ridge is about 6 miles in length, all in. But there's a very short, roughly 1 to 1.5 mile section, which is the most exposed. Yeah. And it's literally, it's like a pinnacle with its drops off on both sides. as we came off that, there's a big boulder field, so there's lots and lots of boulders and stones and things like that. And I was so tired that my eyes were going a lot slower. So when I put my foot down, expecting to go on a rock, my head was too slow to realise that the rock was actually further ahead. So I would misstep, I would fall over. And my friends, Stephen and Lee, thought this was hilarious because they were watching me falling over all the time. And between me falling over and them laughing, I had my first proper sense of humour failure, and I picked up a rock and just smashed it off the ground and screamed, and this rock just blew up.
Love it.
I was looking at, I could almost see the finishing line back down at sea level. And I thought, with a mile to go, I'm going to break a leg here and I'm going to finish all this thing. My friends laughing as well. So we had lots of high points along the way, but they were mainly laughing at me being so fatigued. That was the kind of part of the jokes almost.
That was the final burst of energy, though, grabbing that rock. And
yeah. Because they still talk to it to this day. As we're not expecting it at all. But I think at that point you've so much energy into getting to where you think is the end.
Yeah.
To think I'm going to injure myself, people are laughing at me, and you just smash the rock out with just sheer frustration at the lack of progress that was made.
Yeah. So tell me what did that feel like to be that fatigued, and like, what's the decision-making process like? Cause I mean, I fully respect you guys. I think that's great. You have this commitment to safety, and as you should. And so as you kind of get that summit fever, and you're fatigued, like, what is that decision-making feeling like?
So when I've always believed, Scott, that to get something done, pick a team that's better than you are. So I'd gone out to my friends and colleagues, and I had 12 people who had volunteered to assist, either as checkpoint staff or to do various sections with me. So when I was doing the cycling, I had my friend Stephen and my friend Jill. So Jill represented Great Britain in triathlons. So I knew that for cycling, Stephen and Jill were far better than me, so they could make better choices because they were more experienced. Again, I was in the water with Gary and Jill. They were better swimmers than I was, so they could make those calls. Likewise with the row with Lee. Lee was an accomplished kayaker and I wasn't. So every single section had someone that was better than me. And that meant that because they were fresh into that evolution that they came through, they were better placed to make choices based on their experience and their judgment. And I always said that I would defer to their judgment, because I would probably be at a stage where I was too fatigued to make good choices, and I would trust and defer to them to make them for me. So it was very much surround yourself with better people and they will take care of you.
I love this so much. This is so profound, and it's like, this is a life lesson that you can apply to so many things. You did this epic journey from coast to coast, and there were these different segments. But ultimately you were the instrument. And as you said, you had experts that were more advanced than you in each individual segment, and you had them there, and you trusted them to essentially make the decisions for you. And you showed up and kind of went through the motions. I mean, it's such a metaphor for life, right?
It is, yeah. No, I said at the start that although I would be the only person doing the full route non-stop, I would be the only constant throughout. I would rely on every single person to basically drag me along to the next section, because when I started to flag, I'd have to rely on someone else in that team to bring me up to the standard, to make the time, to make the cut-off, to get to the next person. So I'm firmly confident in my belief that had I not had that good team with me, I probably would have flagged a lot, or I would have made wrong decisions purely because of fatigue or looking for an easy way out. Because at that point, you are so fatigued that there's elements that you just want it to end. But you've got the team taking you with you, taking you with them. And that's how I ultimately got to the end of it, was with 14 that was there.
Yeah. And it's smart that you did that. It would have been dangerous if you didn't, but I love that life metaphor. I think that's so cool. Now, when you said you got to the top of the ridge, you said you could kind of look over and almost see the finish line from where you were. And so
Yeah,
I'm curious, like I kind of felt that with you as you said that, because you've come across at this point, you're well over 100 miles. You don't, or actually, I think you said you only had a couple miles left at that point. And so, kind of being at that, was that like a point where you kind of looked down and you kind of thought to yourself, like, I'm all but there. I'm curious what that feeling was like to be able to see the finish line from that high vantage point.
I think we'd done so much planning and so much preparation and so much fitness training that finishing the event was never in doubt.
Hmm.
But when I came off the ridge, because there was a large iron bridge at the end, and I knew that when I was looking from the mountaintop down onto this iron bridge, it was probably about 5 kilometres away. I thought, that's the end. And I've got about 1 hour 20 to get there.
Right.
This is eminently doable. I can definitely do this if I move and shift now and get there. And probably coming down from that mountain was the first time that I'd dared to dream that we were actually going to do it, because when we started the event, we were breaking new ground. It had never been done before. We looked at the maps, we judged time and distance and speed, etc. And we knew that it was theoretically it could be done because the maps told us that, and the maths said that it could be done. But because we'd gone up against such harsh weather, we'd had setbacks with fatigue and all the rocks being slippery, the thought of doing it was getting further and further away from me, because I thought we're ticking by time so much here. But when I looked down and saw the bridge and saw the time that I had left, I thought, I got this burst of adrenaline thinking I can actually do this, because we'd had 6 months of planning, talking to the media. There was a lot of focus on this, a lot of onus. I thought, I'm actually going to pull this off if I get my backside off this hill and I get moving, and I actually just, whatever I've got left, just use it to get to the end. Yeah. And I can rest at the end. I can no feel sorry for myself once it's finished, but don't feel sorry for yourself now, because you're not there yet.
Yeah.
And it worked. Yeah.
Coming down is not a walk in the park. I know that. So you come down the other side of the ridge, you come down back to sea level, you come across and you get to the finish line. And you also shared a video with me of you crossing the finish line, and there was an embrace with your wife at the end. And I want to know what that felt like.
Yeah. So at the finishing line, the support team had set up banners, and they got champagne and stuff like that. But Alana, my wife, was very much front and centre. So when I came across the finish line, my support team had all kind of to the wings almost, and it was just Alana, and it was just I hugged her, and it was like sick. Well, it was actually 5 or 6 years of heartbreak with the miscarriage, but then this intense 6 months of planning and media, because although I'd done the event, Alana was very much a linchpin in everything that happened, because she'd been there throughout. And it was this kind of feeling that, we've done it. We've raised the awareness of miscarriage. We've gone through these 4 tragedies of losing children. We've crossed the country. We've gone up against storms and mountains, and we're both here. And if physically we can do that, and if our marriage can endure all that stuff as well, we're actually going to be okay. It's that feeling that even if we never have a child because of whatever's happening, it doesn't matter. We've endured everything. We've endured so much more than most marriages will endure, and we've got through it. So we're actually going to be okay. And that embrace just made it all worthwhile, I would say.
Yeah. What did it feel like to you?
It felt surreal, because there's a point when you cross the finishing line and everything stops. So your heart rate comes down, your mind starts to stop thinking about routes and times and try to make up time, and there's this huge dump of emotion and relief, because everything that's dominated your life for the past 6 months has now stopped. And we're getting like messages on social media and things all come through. It was things going up on Facebook from the fire service to say that I'd done it, and I can't remember any of it, because I was just zoned out. We had a major sponsor came on board, which is a very well-known Scottish whisky company, and they put us all up in a hotel at the end, and Alana had to bath me because I was just sitting in the bath, just slumped, and she had to wash me, dress me for dinner, and I was just completely empty. I had nothing left at all.
Did you sleep for a while afterwards?
Yes. Yeah. I went down to the bar, I had 1 or 2 beers, 1 whiskey, and I went to bed, and I slept for about 12 hours.
Yeah. So here's the magic question, Les. What did the clock say when you came across that finish line?
23 hours and 27 minutes.
23 hours and 27 minutes. The goal was to do it in under 24, and you did it with time to spare.
Yeah. So I think, to me, that demonstrated that our planning, our time checkpoints, everything had been done properly. You know, we'd done this to the absolute best. I couldn't have gone any faster. I was maxing out effort on every single evolution. Had the weather been kind of on the cycle, possibly a little bit quicker, but I think the weather on the cycle made it even more of a challenge, which made it even more of a personal achievement for me, I think. So yeah, as a team, we were all very happy that we'd all done our jobs to get me across the finishing line for that time.
Yeah. So are you the first to have accomplished this that you know of?
Yeah, I was the first straight line crossing across Scotland in a single time frame. Yeah,
that's awesome. So do you think you're going to start a movement, and that there's going to be people that are going to follow? Because that's an epic adventure. It sounds like fun. I mean, we've got ultra marathons, and this is like taking the ultra marathon to a whole nother level.
Yeah, we'd like to do it again, but perhaps do it in stages and actually enjoy it, or potentially do the south coast to the north coast in a straight line. But that's about 500 miles, so that'll be a bigger undertaking. But that's I'd be very annoyed if someone did south to north and kind of beat me doing them both.
There you go.
I think it's pretty cool to do that as well.
There you go. Les, so you had 12 people on your team. Some of them participated at different segments with you. You had people at different checkpoints and stops to make sure that you were fed and kind of helping you along the way. What was the common thread that allowed you to sort of rally all 12 of those folks to get them excited to want to be part of this?
I think because they were all close friends and colleagues, they knew what Alana and I had gone through with the miscarriages. And they knew how much it meant to us to get this message across and to raise money for the charity. And they knew that they wanted to be part of contributing to that success. And I think on a personal level as well, I knew that they had faith in me to actually do it. So they knew that I'd been doing the training, we've been doing the planning, we were taking this very, very seriously. And if they bought into it, and if they supported us, it would be a successful undertaking. But I think they did it because they were just very, very good friends, and it was a very exciting thing to be part of as well.
How did that feel to you, to have 12 people that were willing to commit such a big part of their lives to help you accomplish this big goal? That speaks to the power of the friendship that you have with them.
It does. Yeah, I think it also speaks to their appetite to do stupid things outdoors, which they all do. But yeah, I think first and foremost, it was that desire to help.
Yeah,
was just the core thread of everything that we went through, every single aspect of the event. It was helping a friend or friends with Alana who you knew had gone through a rough ride and who had to do this. You know, I dread to think what our mental health would have been had we then not pulled this off, because that would have been another failure to compound all the grief beforehand as well. So I think they understood what it meant to us to get this done.
Yeah, and I suspect that they knew there was something bigger in this, that this was bigger than each of the individuals on the team, and
Yeah,
that it was going to lead to bigger things. And I definitely want to get into that. But one of the things that you and I spoke about before we started recording this call, the first time that we met, we kind of talked a little bit about sort of what inspired you to take on this particular challenge. You guys experienced some grief and some adversity with the miscarriages, but there's all
yeah.
kinds of different things that you could have chosen, but you chose this particular challenge. And I'm just curious, like, what was it like? What things kind of occurred like earlier on in life that kind of led you to this sort of this particular adventure?
When I was at school, I was the kind of stereotypical overweight kid. You know, back at school in the 80s in the UK, the only sport you had on offer was football or soccer, as we call it in the US. And because I had absolutely no skill whatsoever in soccer, I was basically led to believe that I was therefore useless at sport because I couldn't play sport. And you know, it's that kind of there's that saying that if you judge a fish by how it can climb a tree, the fish will think it's stupid. And it wasn't. It was simply I'd grown up because I couldn't play football and because that was the only sport I tried. I thought I'm useless at sport. It's just not what I do. Then when I went to high school, I met a teacher, Mr. Murdoch, who was a mountain leader. He was into hill walking, cycling, mountaineering, and he established a club in the school to take pupils into the mountains. And I joined, and it was a complete revelation for me because it was rather than simply being a pursuit where you have to score a goal or run to a certain point. In the mountains, you've got fitness, but you've also got planning your route, checking your weather, making decisions, being resilient and stuff. And I found this kind of world of fitness and outdoors and adventure in the outdoors that I didn't know existed. And that basically sparked a passion for me about being in the mountains and being outside.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'd always been this kid that was trying to chase a football about to absolutely no effect. But I was now being given the chance to say, we're going to climb to the top of this mountain. And when you get there, well, you've now achieved that. And the feeling of achievement was something that a lot of kids at school probably hadn't ever achieved before.
Yeah.
So when I then left high school, I got a job as an instructor at a kids' adventure camp where I was taking kids climbing, abseiling, hill walking, canoeing, do all these different outdoor pursuits and trying to teach these kids that if you can't play basketball or you can't play soccer, there's so much more you can do, which gets you active, gets you outside, builds your confidence, builds your teamwork and ability. And for me, I think that the outdoors is the best non-academic classroom you've got because you can learn so much about yourself, nature, you can build strength and resilience and being outdoors in tough conditions. And that sparked a kind of flame for me thereafter that I've just always continued.
Can you talk about that? Because that's a huge subject for this podcast, that
Yeah.
spark that you just talked about. You said the outdoors and related nature, it created a spark for you. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's very hard to actually quantify what it was or what led to that. But for me, I think, especially nowadays where you're tied to a mobile phone or a laptop, etc., just being outside with your thoughts, going where you want to go, as fast or as slow as you want to go. It's probably an element of life now that a lot of adults have lost because we're dictated to by work and by social media, and we never take stock, we never take that time to just put the phone away, go outside, just spend time with yourself. And I think certainly going through the kind of grief of the miscarriages or spending time outdoors allowed you to compound and process a lot of thoughts because you were away in this world where, in a huge mountain range, your worries are actually pretty small because of this huge horizon in front of you. And it put a lot of it into context. And also for me, no matter what perceived failures there were with miscarriage, I could still climb a mountain and I could still be in control of certain events, whether it's planning, making choices, etc. on the hill. And I think there's so much that the outdoors can give you as a human being if you dare to go into that environment.
Yeah. Well, you got it done, and you got it done with 33 minutes to spare. It's really an amazing accomplishment. I want to just kind of wrap up with just a little bit of discussion about the awareness that you were trying to create with this event for miscarriage. So can you kind of talk to us, because you had a bunch of media coverage. This was a big deal in Scotland, and so can you talk about like how what you did and this accomplishment has fed the awareness of miscarriage and having the conversation? You talked about the taboo. Can we get into that a little bit?
Yeah. So grief that you get around miscarriage it's a very strange grief because you haven't lost anyone. It's not a bereavement as such. You've more lost the hopes and dreams of the future rather than actually losing someone that you knew. So it's a very strange type of loss to come to terms with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because of that, it requires its own specialist type of support because it's a very emotionally led loss rather than a physical loss of someone who was in your life. Now, the only introduction that we had to our kids was a scan where we saw the heartbeat, we saw everything else. We never met that child. So cynics would say, well, you've not lost anyone, but we saw the heartbeat. So we did, because that was a human life that was there. It wasn't on this earth, but it was a life. So it took us to some pretty dark places in regards to our own mental health, because there is support there, but I think because you feel that your grief is almost false to an extent, you perhaps don't access that support. And I've now become a passionate ambassador for mental health, and in particular male mental health, because I think the fire service is excellent. But I probably in the past tried to live up to that stereotype of being a macho firefighter who lifted weights and climbed mountains and did all this strong stuff, which looking back on it, it was just a very, very thin veneer of a human being not wanting to come to terms with what had happened and not wanting to deal with it. So by talking to the media, so we have a very good media team in the fire service. So I spoke to Irina, who's our comms manager, and she said, you've definitely got a story which will resonate with thousands of people, and it's something which the media will want to run because it's something that you have to start talking about. So Irina was very much front and centre of coordinating that media liaison. So we gave interviews to the Daily Record newspaper, who then ran a story in the Sunday Mail. And I then began getting letters and cards being sent to the fire station from people who had also gone through that. So we achieved the aim of getting people thinking differently about what baby loss is, what bereavement is, and through miscarriage. And we hoped, particularly for male mental health, by opening up and saying, this has happened. I actually struggled quite a lot, but I got through it through physical activity, talking to friends, being open about it, just processing and dealing with what happened. And I got through the other side. And I think we've got that message out there. And we're seeing more and more now on social media, etc., about baby loss awareness weeks now a thing. Not because of what we did, but because there's a kind of momentum now building where it's not a taboo thing, or it's not as taboo as it once was.
Yeah.
We should be normalising talking about this because it happens to 25% of women, and obviously each woman will have a partner, whether it's male, same sex, etc. So it's going to influence and impact a lot of people. So why not talk about it?
Yeah. Well, you guys are a huge inspiration, and I love that you're bringing the awareness to it. And I agree. I mean, it's so common. I mean, my wife and I experienced it as well. It's, it's such a common thing. And, although it doesn't help when somebody, when it happens to you, it's still deeply an emotional thing. So, I think what you guys are doing and bringing the awareness to it is amazing. I think that I'd love for you to share. There was a charity that you guys had connected to in this event that you guys supported. I'd love for you to just kind of share with the listeners about that charity.
Yeah, certainly. So it's a UK-based charity called Tommy's,
Mm-hmm.
and they fund scientific research into miscarriage and stillbirth, neonatal death, and they also fund support services for families of bereaved people who have gone through child loss.
Yeah. That's great. Well, that's awesome. And we'll put a link we'll put a link in the show notes if people are interested in that. So to wrap things up here, Les, I've got 2 questions that I ask everybody that comes on the podcast. And so, at some point they're going to make a movie about this epic adventure that you took across Scotland, and a Hollywood movie. And I want to know who the actor is going to be that's going to play you in this movie.
It'd have to be someone really good looking for a start, I would say. No, I think it'd be a good role for Will Ferrell, because there might be lots of stumbles and things along the way, but you always come good in the end. And I know that you're watching the movies that Will Ferrell's in.
I love it.
He always has the best of intentions throughout, but he might take a difficult route to get there, but he always good at the end. So I think it'd be suited to Will Ferrell, I would say.
That's awesome. Will Ferrell coming across Scotland. I love it. Okay, what's the movie going to be called?
I think it'd be called Chasing the Rainbow. So,
okay, Chasing the Rainbow. I love it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a thing in the US, but certainly within the UK, if you have a child or a baby after miscarriage, it's termed as a rainbow baby, because it's basically your kind of pot of gold after the storm. And our challenge was called the Chasing the Rainbow Challenge, because we were basically trying to chase the rainbow to get to the end, and to give us the drive and the inspiration to fund private IVF, etc. So I think Chasing the Rainbow would be the best title for that.
I love that, Les. Chasing the Rainbow, starring Will Ferrell. Awesome. I'm going to watch that movie. Yeah. Well, Les, thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you for all the work that you're doing to bring awareness to miscarriage. And to those listening, I hope you've been inspired today as much as I have. I hope Les and Alana's story has encouraged you to listen to the voice inside that calls you to adventure, because we want to hear your story next. If you have a story to tell, or you need a nudge to create one, please send me an email. We'd also appreciate it if you'd help us spread the word by leaving a review and sharing or tagging Inspire Campfire in your social media. And until next time, I want to encourage you to get outside. Thank you for listening. Les, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.